Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast. Each week, your host, Casey Hasten, Director of Recruiting at VIP, will bring you valuable insights from thought leaders, introduce you to incredible companies, and bring you tips for landing your dream job from our team of executive recruiters at VIP. And now, Casey Hasten.
Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast, a podcast devoted to adding value to your career or candidate search, brought to you by VIP. I'm your host, Casey Hasten. I'm an executive recruiter, director of recruiting with VIP, and your all-around hiring guru. And I am super excited about the guests that I've brought for you today, so we are going to get right into it. So today on the show, I'd like to welcome Michael Gorton, 14-time serial entrepreneur, founder of Teledoc, and best-selling and award-winning author. As one of the pioneers of telemedicine, Michael helped create what is now a $250 billion industry. Michael's goal is to continue developing new ideas as well as technology that have a transformative foundation, generating returns for stakeholders. When it comes to new innovations, Michael's not afraid to take risks with industry-changing ideas. He joins us today to discuss goal setting, creativity, and all the good stuff. So Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. It really is. This is such a fun studio.
This is the funnest, just kidding, most fun studio. So, and I love it. So I always start the show asking how we got connected.
How did we get connected?
I love it because this is really the power of networking. You were on a radio show that I was on. You were on the Mamie show.
Oh, right.
And he tagged me, and I'm always like, creeping on his guest. And he tagged me when he posted your episode, and I was like, I got to talk to that guy. And then I just reached out to you on LinkedIn, and you were kind enough to get back with me, which was really amazing.
Well, so he's great, right?
Absolutely.
The Spanish Harlem. You know that he's from there, right?
No.
Every time I think of him, I can't stop thinking about that song.
I did not know that.
Anyway.
So I think it's so amazing. And then the networking and the connecting didn't stop because one of your good friends happened to be recording here today.
Correct.
And then,
Fab Mancini.
Yes. And then,
right.
and tell us again, what is Fab's popular for, or known for?
Fab is known for so many things. We would be talking for 15 minutes, but he started... He's the one who made Parker College into what it is. But he's a best-selling author. He's been on CNN. He's amazing.
Yeah, and so it was so interesting because like you were talking to him, and I walked up, and we all started talking like we're all old friends, and we're like, yeah, we're going to connect you two, and I'm like, this is what I love about networking.
Exactly.
Especially people that know how to do it right. It's beautiful.
And so because of what you guys do at VIP. I mean, we can hit this over and over and over again because it's the most critical thing that you can do is figuring out the best ways to network.
Absolutely. I recently, not that this is going to be about networking, but I always bring this up at the beginning of the show just because it's so important. And I like for people to see the different ways that you can connect with people too. It's not, you can connect on LinkedIn, but you can connect like we just did. But I just did a post. It was called The Power of Networking. And I went down, because I keep a networking notebook, I went down the entire chain of people that I met that finally introduced me to this candidate who I just got an offer for.
Great.
And it was like six relations down. It was crazy. So those are the kind of things that get me up in the morning.
Yep.
So
that's great.
So tell me about you. Tell me a little bit about your background and how did you become an entrepreneur?
I grew up kind of on the poor side of middle class, or maybe the rich side of poverty. I can't remember exactly what the best way to say that is, but I had big dreams. And so I worked my way through college and became an engineer and started moving up in a company, and it just wasn't moving fast enough for me. So I started my first entrepreneurial endeavor, and I thought I was going to get rich. And then the thieves came.
Oh, no.
And so company number one took off and then crashed. But, they say you learn more with your mistakes than you do with your successes. And we certainly learned a lot there.
I think that's amazing. So do you know, like, at what age you realized that you were that you had big dreams, or do you just remember always having big dreams?
I always had big dreams. When I was 10, I decided I wanted to be the first person on Mars. And I lived my life like I was going to do that until I was probably early 30s.
Wow.
So it started early. You know?
Yeah. And you know what? You still could be the first person on Mars. It could happen.
I know. That's true. That's true. I thought I was getting a little bit too old for that, but technology, you know, is changing all the time.
Well, and we have so many companies that are like focusing on that now.
My new
So
company is.
Your new company is.
Yep.
That's awesome. We're gonna have to have a one-off and talk about that, because
Sure.
that fascinates me
Yep.
as well. But so you know that we help job seekers land their dream job, which requires a great deal of self-motivation. As a successful entrepreneur, you had to stay motivated through it all in order to succeed. So what advice would you give an individual who might be looking for a job right now, maybe having a hard time staying self-motivated?
Well, I think find the job that makes most sense to you, that you're most passionate about, and let your
Thank you.
passion drive the search, and ultimately the thing that we as employers are always looking for is passion. It doesn't happen often enough. And so if you're passionate about what you're wanting to do, it will come across. You'll probably get the job.
I think that is so important. And I think that if you're not passionate about that job, and I tell people this all the time, you need to figure out why. You know, and I was just sharing with you before we came on that I was in a career I did not love for a long time. And I thought, well, that's what you went to school for. That's what you're supposed to do. You don't have permission to, you know, get out of the rut and do something different. But you do. You absolutely have permission to do something different if it's not serving you.
You get one life.
Yes.
You might as well have fun with it.
Absolutely. And it is what you create it to be. So,
That's great.
you know, make your choices. You choose your own reality every single choice you make, right? The lens that you see the world through is the lens, that's what's going to help create your reality.
Correct.
So I love that stuff. So your best-selling book, Broken Handoff, talks about the lessons you learned from building 14 different companies. If you had to choose one lesson that you would share today, or maybe two, what do you think the most valuable lesson you learned in building your companies?
I think it's a combination of what we were just talking about, which is passion. Don't do it unless you're passionate, but remember that it's going to be hard, sometimes really hard. So passion, that starts with a P. Let's go to the next one, persistence. You have to have persistence, because if you're doing something really great, everybody's going to tell you, nah, it can't be done. Persistence is what gets it done. That's what did it at Teledoc.
Yeah? So what prompted you to start Teledoc? I mean, seriously. I mean,
Yeah.
it was revolutionary.
So we have to give the credit for the idea to Jay Sanders.
Okay. Thank you, Jay.
Yes, he created the idea in the late '60s, and it used technology that we can't even imagine anymore. But I was climbing Kilimanjaro with a friend of mine who was an electrical engineer and a medical doctor, and he kept telling me, we need to build this company called Cyber Medical Services. The name made me want to puke. But thanks to some very smart people, we found a better name like Teledoc. But you know, the young kids nowadays talk about billion-dollar companies. They call them unicorns. And so I like to tell them that there are unicorns on Kilimanjaro. I found one.
So, before we came on, you were talking about the name, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, kind of walk us through how you chose the name of Teledoc.
Well, I wish I could say it was me. It was probably Shannon Lines or Shelley or somebody like that, way smarter in marketing. But Teledoc, we wanted a double entendre. And so if it was T-E-L-E, which is the way most people spell it, but it's wrong, we did register that domain name, T-E-L-E-D-O-C, but we picked T-E-L-A-D-O-C because it's like telephone a doc or tell a doc. And that was the goal.
That's amazing. And I love that y'all were so thoughtful and intentional when you were choosing the name, because so many times people don't do, and I'm guilty of that too, because, I've got several projects, passion projects that I'm working on. I'm like, oh, this will work. And I don't think through all the ramifications further down the line. So
I think it comes down to simplicity. So we should always apply simplicity.
Absolutely.
And Teledoc is a simple name, but it means something.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anytime that you are doing something completely new, right, and innovative, what were some of the challenges you faced with Teledoc when you were building that organization?
The reason why Sanders created the idea in the 60s and nothing happened was because of resistance inside the industry, most specifically the boards of medical examiners. Mm-hmm. So most people who have heard me talk say that in the beginning, we built this model, we tested it, all of our patients loved it. We went to the Texas Board of Medical Examiners and they said, Mr. Gorton, you're going to go to prison if you build this company.
What?
And so that was the challenge that we had to overcome. And I think people had tried to overcome that challenge in the past with business warfare or legal warfare, and we chose not to do it that way. We instead went back to the Board of Medical Examiners and said, why is it wrong? And then we restructured our argument so it made sense to them.
Gotcha. So I had no idea that they told you were going to go to prison. Mm-hmm. That's incredible. And you still did it.
It's for the young entrepreneurs that I'm trying to educate on, investors will always ask them, what keeps you up at night? Guess what kept me up at night at Teledoc? It was those boards of medical examiners sending sheriffs and guns and things, saying you're going to prison.
Oh my goodness. So you've started 14 different companies. Which one, if you could, would you say was probably the one you're most passionate about, or your favorite company?
You're kidding me, right? They're children, You don't
get to have a favorite?
I don't think so. Okay, so if I ask you which one was your favorite child, or any one of you out there, which is your favorite child?
I feel like my parents had a favorite, and it was not me.
I don't know.
Which one would you say is more of a passion project, maybe?
Well, I think it's always the one I'm working on now. Mm-hmm. I'm a big believer that you can't rest on your laurels. If you're going to keep building things, you have to keep passion moving forward and not looking back at the old stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I'm working on a company called Recuro right now, and it is the next generation after Teledoc. Let's catch things before they become serious medical issues. Like every one of us has a friend who has been diagnosed with something, mm-hmm. cancer, diabetes, whatever. Why is that still happening? We have the technology now. And that same technology, what makes it really fun is we can start catching cancer before it becomes stage 2 and stage 3. So it's a minor treatment rather than years of chemo.
Right.
But using those same kind of modalities, we can keep people younger. And so one of the things that we say is, let's be preemptive about catching things that cost money and kill people. And at the same time, let's learn the 30 or 40 things that you have to do so that you don't age the way we're aging. And so there's a phrase nowadays that, at least people my age, I'm sure you're much younger than me, but people say 60 is the new 40. And I think we're probably 10 years away from truly being able to say 100 is the new 40, where we look and have the same strength at 100 that we did at 40. And that's one of the goals of Recuro Health.
I love that. So I'm very curious, and I know this is kind of off topic, but I'm sure it will benefit. Somebody out there needs to hear this, right? Mm-hmm. Is this natural, homeopathic type preventative care so that we become 100 is the new 40, or is it through medicines?
Yeah.
How are you hoping to do this?
It won't be one thing or two things or 5 things. It'll be 20 or 30 or 40 things that you do. We're starting to understand one of the primary reasons that people age is something called a telomere, which is the end cap of the DNA.
I'm studying those.
And yeah,
I'm a nerd.
and they get shorter and shorter and shorter. And now we're figuring out ways to lengthen them again.
Yes.
And so that will be one of the things that we'll do. But I think it's not going to be just eat well and exercise. It's those two are going to be in there,
right,
along with the right nutrients, vitamins and things. But there will be a lot of other biochemistry that we do. And we still have something called the Hayflick Limit, which is a really interesting biological limit that seems to apply to all mammals. And that is, for humans, it's about 120 years. And that's related to the telomeres. So if we can keep the telomeres from getting too short, does that mean that we're going to live longer? We don't know yet. We think so, but we don't know yet.
That is so fascinating. I have been just recently tripped across the telomeres, and so I know exactly what you're talking about. And I'm just like, I kind of want to go get mine measured, but I kind of don't. I'm kind of afraid they're going to be like, no, you said 40 is the 100 for you instead of the other way around.
Well, we're going to find a way so it doesn't matter. We'll make it so that 100 is the new 40 for you.
I am definitely going to have to keep an eye on this because this kind of stuff fascinates me, and I do a lot of natural ways for longevity, but I'm going to be curious to see what you have coming out on that. So, okay, let's go back to our candidates for a second. So many of our candidates, they struggle with that open-ended question, and how to answer that. So, and I know that you've probably mentored quite a few people, because I remember our initial conversation when I asked you, why did you take this call? And you're like, can you tell that story real quick? It was somebody that you reached out to early in your career.
Yes. So I think from a mentoring perspective, you always have to find, now, once you get successful, your job should be to give back. I got successful. I didn't have the same resources as somebody who is wealthy, whose father was a CEO or something like that. And so kind of had to drag the hard way into it. And so I appreciated the first time somebody came to me who was well known, who said, I will help you. And I think that's the thing that we have to do after we get successful. We have to find those people with the great ideas that are willing to do the work and help them.
I think that is beautiful, and I love your give back spirit. I think it's so important. Have you heard of the book The Go-Giver?
No.
So, and Bob Berg was actually on the show, but it's a beautiful book. I highly recommend it. It's not a very long read.
It's a great title.
Yeah, The Go-Giver. He also has The Go-Seller and all these other ones too. He's got a whole line of them, but The Go-Giver really spoke to me. In fact, when I am mentoring these kids that I catch coming out of college, this is the first book I give them because it's such a good model to follow, because it's called The 5 Principles of, I should know this off the top of my head. Anyway, but basically it's about you give, but you allow yourself to receive too, because one of them is the Law of Reciprocity.
Right.
And that's where I struggled.
Yeah.
I didn't want people giving it to me because I thought it made me weak, right?
Right.
But having changed that mentality to where I now receive, like when you introduced me to Fabs earlier, that's an introduction that, though I may not have deserved it, I certainly welcomed it and appreciated it. So I think that's so important.
Right. I think, and that's one of the easiest things. We have this network of friends. Fab Mancini is one of them, who, if he calls me and says, will you help this person? I say yes, and vice versa. And so we all understand that sort of network of, we got here because people helped us.
Yes.
And we have to be willing to do that again. And the ones that aren't, we don't want them in our network.
Exactly. I think that's beautiful. So along those lines, that took a long way to get to this question. What advice would you give to someone to help them craft a response to an open-ended question?
I think the right answer to a question is going to really rely on what's in your heart. And so if somebody's asking you, if you're sitting in a job interview and somebody's asking you a question that you have no idea how to answer, you're in the wrong room.
Yes.
I remember one of my college interviews, it was with an aerospace company that I really wanted to go work for. And I researched that company so much that when the interviewer asked me questions, I was answering with things that she didn't know.
Oh, wow.
And I had to educate her. So if you're passionate about it, you'll know. If you're in the wrong place, you should know that also.
I believe in, some people call them coincidences. Some people, I like to think of them as synchronicities. I don't think there's any coincidences. I think everything happens for a reason. You're right where you're supposed to be. Trust the journey. And I think it's interesting that you just answered that with answer with your heart, because literally my last guest almost said the exact same thing.
Wow.
Yeah, it just gave me chills telling you that. So there you go, people. Answer with your heart. And I think when people do that and they show up authentically and they show up genuine, it just makes life so much better.
Right. It does.
On
both sides.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I've learned is that I used to be one of those type of people, like I would want to try to control what you thought about me, and it would drive me nuts, and I'd write all these scripts in my head about it. And I think when I finally gave that up and embraced what's in my heart and what I'm passionate about, and I don't care, a lot of people make fun of me because I started a podcast. They, make fun of me because I, put myself out there on the news, and I'm just like, you're not my tribe,
Yeah.
It's fine. I don't care, I'm doing what makes me happy. So I think that's really important that we do that in life.
It is. You'll do it better if it makes you happy.
So, and we kind of talked about this, but I just really want to emphasize the importance of networking. I mean, can you think of a time where somebody, other than the one we just talked about, reached out a hand to you and lifted you up and pulled you up so that you could be successful?
Sure. Over and over and over and over again. I look for mentors today, even though I mentor a lot of people. And some of them are younger than me. The chairman of my current board is a good friend now, and I see him as a mentor. But I think you have these different perspectives, and you can learn something from everybody. And everybo's got a network too.
Again, synchronicities. So that was one of the pieces of advice that my mentor gave me, is that you have somebody that's older than you, but you get somebody that's younger than you too, because it's a totally different perspective.
Right.
That's some good advice right there.
Yep. Yesterday in the studio was Julian Policino. He's probably half my age.
Yeah.
I always tell him, hey, I want to be the president of your fan club.
He's a great guy.
Yes, he is.
So I'm sure he would let you too.
I don't know. His fiance may fight with me over it.
Oh, is she the president right now?
I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Oh my goodness, this has been such an amazing conversation. I have so enjoyed this. And how do people find you? How do they?
LinkedIn.
That's how I found you.
Right. Yeah. It works.
Yeah.
It's such a great business tool.
Absolutely. And talk about networking. That's seriously, I saw you because I was tagged on something that you were in.
Right.
That's how I got connected to you. So it works. It definitely works. You just got to use it. And you've got to be responsive to it. You can't just have a LinkedIn and not ever look at it.
There are those out there, aren't there?
I know. I in-mail them all the time and they don't respond.
I got it.
Yeah, because that's the primary way that we reach out to potential candidates is through LinkedIn.
Okay. And
they're not looking. If I see they only have 10 connections, I'm like, yeah, don't waste your time.
Right.
Because they're not using this very well. But it's definitely. Do you have? So I'm sure Curo has a website.
It does.
That we can go to.
It's recurohealth.com.
Okay. And follow your longevity studies and everything that you're doing.
Yep.
Well, do you have anything new coming up?
Can't talk about it, right?
Oh,
wait a minute. So we didn't say anything about Back to Space, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah.
And we're going to be building a facility, which will be sort of a corporate events. The Jeff Crilly people who have recorded here will know what I mean there.
Yep.
But sort of the Jeff Crilly of space, but just outside of Fort Worth. In Jacksboro, Texas. And on the outside, it's going to be a corporate events center. But on the inside, it's going to be one of the most fantastic international go-to destinations. So people will come from all over the world to see this place. And I won't say anything more than that, but it's on Back to Space website.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go check that out too, because I know you've mentioned that several times, so I know this is definitely something pretty dear to your heart.
Another change the world kind of fun thing.
Man, you're gonna leave us hanging today.
That's good.
That's awesome.
Stay tuned, right?
Yeah, we'll have to have you back on when you can talk more about it for
Right,
sure. So,
right.
well, I want to get to our VIP questions. So,
Okay.
and I think you're really going to enjoy the first one. I know you've probably had a sneak peek at them,
I did.
but I'm so super curious to hear your answers to this one.
Yeah.
So, if you were chosen to be one of the first colonists on Mars, what 3 things or people would you bring with you? And let me remind you, so you don't get in trouble, your wife is listening.
So, I grew up wanting to be the first person on Mars. And my theory was if I was an engineer, a scientist, and a medical doctor, they'd have to pick me because they get 3 for the price of 1, right?
Yeah.
And so you want somebody like that. But no person should ever do, even when we landed people on the moon, it was 2 guys that, well, it was one that stayed up. That was a very lonely person who stayed up circuiting. So obviously you want to bring somebody along with whom you're very compatible. A spouse is a good thing. So that's for 1, right?
Yes, that's 1.
The next thing is you've got to have a resource so you can solve every problem. And I think so you have to have internet access. You have to have something that will give you access to the internet on Mars. Sometimes it's going to be 23 minutes away, but you can wait for the answers mostly. And then you sort of mentioned Shelley a second ago. So she said seeds, and I think that's, if you have seeds, you can plant things, and the seeds will produce oxygen, and they'll produce food, and they'll give you something to work on. I love that movie, The Martian.
I do too. I was just thinking potatoes in my head.
Yeah, potatoes. He did such a great job with that. So those are the 3 things.
I like it, and it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so again, I'm very curious. I'm curious for all the answers to these questions, but particularly you, because you have been such a heavy hitter and such a go-getter for your entire life. So what is one thing you do each morning to set your day up for success?
Well, if you start early and you do exercise or something to get your heart rate up early in the morning, you're going to be more efficient all day long. I usually don't eat until noon. I really like this intermittent fasting concept, and it makes me work better in the morning. But I think getting your pulse rate up, do whatever you like doing for that.
I think that's very much been a recommendation from a lot of people. So,
right.
Are you familiar with the Miracle Morning?
Somebody was talking to me about it recently, so a little.
And so that's one, he calls Hal Elrod is the author, and it's great. That's really where that question came from, was me reading the Miracle Morning. And but he went and researched like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of successful people to see what they did each morning. And what he found out was they all did different things, but kind of the same. And so he came up with, he pulled all those things together. He calls them the savers. And he set up a Miracle Morning. It's a routine. And it's, I won't go through them right now. It's like 6 of them, but it's a good read. I say it's changed my life since I did it. So there's
then
that.
We should all do it.
Yes. It's pretty good. Okay, my final question. If your life's work was being summarized in a news article, what would the headline be?
Taking nothing, creating something significant, and then figuring out how to inspire the next generation to do the same.
I like it, especially the part about inspiring the next generation.
So now we need somebody from the newspaper to turn that long sentence into 3 words. I'm sure there are 3 words. I have no idea what they are though.
Me either right now. So, Michael, this has been an absolute pleasure. I so appreciate your time today and for sharing your wisdom and your success with our audience. I just have one last thing to say to you.
Okay.
You are a VIP.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So are you.